Well, hello there, my studio teacher friends. Welcome to episode 249 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Christina Whitlock here, your host and self-appointed anytime piano teacher friend. I created Beyond Measure to give teachers like you a little dose of solidarity each week, and I'm so glad you found me. Today's episode is a continuation of last week's. We are looking at what to do with those busy high school seniors, and perhaps just those busy teenagers in general. Are you ready? Let's get on with the show. You are listening to episode 249 of the Beyond Measure podcast. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, you will want to make a note to go back and do that. We talked about helping make sure our seniors get some exposure to all the top hits of the piano repertoire. I received a lot of excited feedback after last week's episode, so let's keep the party rolling today with 4 more things you can do with busy high school seniors. First up today, have you ever considered using your seniors' lesson time to talk about the basics of piano teaching? Taking a few weeks to explore foundational piano pedagogy or exploring method series so they can get a peek into that world? You may know that I often run summer pedagogy programs for high school students. I run one local to me for students who can come in person, and I run one online for students all around the world. I'm passionate about this because I know these students will end up teaching someone, or many someones, when the opportunity appears. I think it would be incredibly fruitful for you to set aside a few weeks of your students' senior year to talk about the basics of piano teaching. We all know our own musical understanding gets further solidified once we teach these things to someone else, so why not let your students get further inside these concepts by learning to teach them to other people? I don't think you have to dive too deeply here. Just pull out a few method books and study them together with your student. Talk about different approaches and let them brainstorm their own ways to teach rhythm and movement and technique. I would have loved doing that with my teachers in high school. Even if you don't want to go back to the very beginning and address the earliest elementary levels, you could also talk about ways to teach concepts from the later elementary or intermediate levels of study. Here's the truth, that in a perfect world, it's actually more ideal for a new teacher to work with students who have more experience. Like a high school senior working with an early intermediate student, that is often an even better setup than introducing them to the art of teaching younger children. When a teenager is able to work with someone whose music more closely resembles theirs, that can be magical. And again, when you study how to teach something, you end up learning that thing on a whole new level. We've all experienced that ourselves. So why not bring a little bit of that benefit to our high school students? It's been a while, but I used to run informal master classes in my studio where my high school seniors were the featured teachers. It can be very sweet. You can invite younger students to play pieces your seniors once loved to play, or new repertoire, either way. But you can give your seniors a few minutes to be the featured clinician, sharing their thoughts and experiences with your younger students. This is a great way to encourage community and foster legacy in your studio. And some seniors, not all, but some, will really rise to that kind of occasion. It's not the right fit for everyone. But if you have some really personable seniors this year, I would really consider how you can help them get their feet wet in the piano teacher world, however small of a step that may be. Moving on to our second idea for busy seniors. What about planning a low key senior performance of some kind? Now, here's the deal. For many years, I was spoiled with seniors who wanted to put on full solo senior recital programs. These were absolute capstones of their study with me, and I have great memories from each of those performances. However, in recent years, I've noticed a drastic change in my students' desires to put together those kinds of performances during the busy senior year. Even my students who are fully gung-ho on the idea in the fall often peter out by January and decide that they would rather take it easy and soak up the remainder of their senior year. The truth is, there are many ways you can host a senior performance. If we're not doing a formal recital, I love having students give small performances, like 2 to 3 pieces, at their graduation parties if the location has a piano. I also love the idea of hosting small in-home recitals for just a handful of family members. This does not have to be a big deal. In fact, my favorite thing to do is to have students plan essentially a walk down their musical memory lane. I ask students to think back through their favorite pieces at each stage of study. This takes the pressure off of them to learn a whole bunch of monster repertoire, and instead, they simply showcase one big piece or two and then present older repertoire. Last week, I talked about the sentimentality of senior year, and this is a really great way to lean into that. I think I've shared this before, but years ago, I had a student perform a program that began with Dad's Dune Buggy by Myra Brooks Turner, and she ended with Schumann's Aufschwung. I mean, that's quite a range of repertoire, but it was so fun. It was a little walk down musical memory lane. Even if you're not putting together a program, why not take a few weeks of senior year and dedicate them to revisiting old favorite pieces? We all know that you find new things about a piece when you revisit it after a certain amount of time. And our understanding of this instrument is always evolving. So there's always going to be something new to try, even with older repertoire or less difficult repertoire. There really is no such thing as a, quote, easy piece for piano, is there? Tell your senior that their assignment for next week is to bring you something old, like from years ago. Without fail, my students really seem to enjoy the excuse to go back into their older books and explore. And secretly, this embodies everything we want our seniors to feel about music study, right? It feels low pressure, low stakes, and it's just fun to explore those piles of old books and reminisce about what's inside. It's something we should be doing with our old books too, for the record. All right, on to our third idea today. This is something I often recommend for working with teenagers in general, but let's not forget the importance of listening to great performers with our students, okay? Many years ago, I had a student preparing one of the Grieg lyric pieces for a master class. We were in that position where he was very well prepared weeks in advance, and I decided to take an entire lesson and devote it to studying different interpretations. We had so much fun pulling up different reputable performers on YouTube and studying their tempo choices, their articulations, their physical approach to the instrument. And really, in hindsight, that was one of my favorite lessons with that student, and we barely played the piano. And yet, I promise you, sitting with him and exploring the impact of those different artistic choices, it really unlocked his perspective of what was possible with our repertoire. Not just the piece he was working on, but really everything we did after that point in time. Sure, I could have assigned him those listening assignments to do at home, and that would have been better than nothing. But sitting together and talking through those interpretations, saying, "Oh, hold up, did you hear that?" and jumping back and listening to that passage again, I mean, that was priceless. It was fun, and it was really beneficial. I would absolutely encourage you to do the same thing with your teens from time to time. Maybe it's not the entire lesson, but I do think we shoulder some responsibility to be showing our students different interpretations of their pieces, not just one idea that we tend to spoon feed them, right? Seriously, friends, if we are not exposing our students to these great performers, if we are not the ones shaping their view of interpretation, who do we expect to do that? I'll tell you a funny story though. When I was in undergrad, the oboe professor decided to play her students 3 recordings of a piece for them to discuss. Now, mind you, these were audio recordings. YouTube did not exist yet, if you can believe it. But anyway, the studio all heavily criticized one of those 3 recordings and basically ripped the interpretation to shreds. And at the end of class, the professor decided to reveal whose recordings they were listening to. And that 3rd one that everybody hated, it was the professor's recording. It was her recording. My friends in the studio were mortified. So, that's a cautionary tale about sharing your own recordings with students. It's not for the faint of heart, apparently. Our 4th and final suggestion for today is somewhat basic. I almost didn't include it because it doesn't feel revolutionary enough, but actually, I think it might be the most important. My friends, duets. Duets, duets, duets. Many years ago, I started a studio tradition where I always play a duet with every senior at the spring studio recital. It's a really fun treat. I'd encourage you to consider that. But regardless of whether or not you're preparing for a performance, if your student hasn't practiced well, or if they don't have their books, duets are almost always a great way to spend your lesson time. It's like practicing sight reading, but on steroids. If I could give you a piece of advice today, it would be to stock your teacher library with duets at every level. They're so important for enforcing rhythmic integrity, for unlocking the imagination, for helping students feel like they're playing something bigger than they really are. Like, all the love for playing duets together, friends. So, if you feel like your senior is hitting a slump, I really hope you'll consider these ideas that we've talked about the last 2 weeks. Just to recap, we talked last week about exploring excerpts of famous piano themes. And today we talked about covering the foundations of teaching, exploring old previous pieces, watching and listening to different interpretations of repertoire, and good old duets. Now, before you go, I wanted to remind you that my super friends on Patreon will gather this Friday for another session of Teachers Teaching Teachers. This week's focus is on scales and especially on how to keep them fresh and inventive for our students. Can I just take a second and brag about Teachers Teaching Teachers? This month marks our 3rd year of TTT sessions. We have been having live discussions for more than 3 years, but TTT, Teachers Teaching Teachers, officially launched in its current format in February of 2023. We've covered a lot of repertoire in that time. We've answered a lot of questions, and we've made teacher friends that personally I wouldn't trade for anything. So if you're looking for a crew of teachers to support you who never speak out of judgment, you should totally check out the Beyond Measure Super Friends on Patreon. As of this recording, it only costs $6 to join, and that $6 helps ensure that this podcast can continue getting produced. Anyway, all that to say, let's grab a glass and toast our way out of here, shall we? Studio music teacher friends from all around the world, today we celebrate the harrowing journey of wrapping up our studies with high school seniors. May we embrace the idea of stepping outside the box, of foregoing the status quo with those students, constantly asking ourselves what we want them to know when they leave our studios. Let's prioritize the way they feel as musicians. Let's do everything in our power to help them nurture a relationship with their instrument that they want to return to, whether they're taking private lessons or not. For our seniors, their training wheels are about to come off, so let's prepare them to go on their merry way, equipped with a strong love and appreciation for playing their instrument. Are you with me? I know you are. Hear, hear. All right, that's it for today, friends. Check out ChristinaWhitlock.com/superfriends for all the details on joining the Patreon for this week's Teachers Teaching Teachers Scale Edition. I will be back with you for a special episode next week, number 250. Whoa, get excited. I'll see you then. Onward and upward, my friends.